My name is Trinity, and if you are here, you must be here to talk about books. And my goodness, guys, do I have a book haul for you. So, if you guys follow my Twitter, you will probably have seen these books already. But I needed to share this with you guys because I got spoiled for my birthday by my husband. He went above and beyond in buying me book presents, and then I got some books from my mom, and then I finally took the massive amount of books that I had in the little corner that you guys saw from my library tour video back to the buy sell trade, and came across some great books and ended up spending $20. Just keep that in mind when I go to show you those books. And then if you guys watched my vlog, you will know that I got my first ever Owlcrate box, which I'm super excited to start that service because I do love young adult, but I don't really like seeking out young adult, if that makes sense. I'd rather focus on adult fantasy and adult books, horror and stuff like that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with young adult. I like young adult, or I wouldn't have gotten Owlcrate in the first place. But I'm very excited to be getting some bookish items to fill my house with. I am also very excited to show you guys what I got from Owlcrate. And another thing, you might be wondering why we are back in the floor. If you've watched my older videos, I started out doing them in the floor because I didn't have the setup to do it on the couch behind me. That is because this haul is massive and I needed to be on the floor with my books beside me because it's just ridiculous. So there are a lot. I'm gonna try and go through them as fast as I can, but I do want to give you guys some sort of an idea of what the books are about. And if I knew how to do the timestamp thing, I would do that for you, but I don't. I am a newbie. I am not very tech savvy, and I wish I knew how to do some things like that. So first, even though this is technically not for my birthday, this is the book I got from Owlcrate, and I am so excited to get to it. Also, gorgeous cover. I have actually been wanting this book for a really long time. The publication date of this book kept getting pushed back, so it's a book I really wanted to get my hands on last year. The Owlcrate version has a design in the background, and the regular ones don't. And Owlcrate always comes autographed, so that's another reason that I wanted to get the Owlcrate, because I would love to add to my autographed books collection. But if you don't know what this is about, I'm going to go ahead and read you the synopsis. 16-year-old Decca lives in fear and anticipation of the blood ceremony that will determine whether she becomes a member of her village. Already different from everyone else because her unnatural intuition, Decca prays for the red blood so she can finally feel like she belongs. Decca, the Gilded Ones. If your blood runs gold, you are outcast, and you have a choice. Live as an outcast or join this group of warrior women who fight to keep her people, her thriving. And I think this is going to be a wonderful read. I really have been looking forward to it for so long. This is going on my March TBR. This is another thing that I'm going to start doing. The Owlcrate books that I get, I'm going to try and read them in the month that I got them. Obviously, I got this at the very end of February, so it will be the following month that they go onto my TBR. But I'm very very excited to get to this. The two books that my mother got me, and I want to say that my mom and my husband went off of my Amazon wish list. So these are all books that I really did want. They picked them for me based on that. A book that I have been dying to get my hands on and dying to read, and all of my friends love it. So I don't know why I've never picked it up. I think it's just because there's just so many books out there, but it was on my Amazon wish list. It was a book that I fully intended to purchase, because all of the stuff that's on my Amazon wish list is stuff I'm putting in there to purchase later. I'm not expecting anybody to buy those things for me. It's just stuff that I want, and I fill it as I find things that I really want to add to my collection. But the first one that my mom got me is Age of Assassins by R.J. Barker. It's a game of assassin versus assassin. Girton Clubfoot has no family, a crippled leg, and is apprenticed to the best assassin in his land. He's learning the art of taking lives, but his latest mission is far more difficult: save a life. Someone is trying to kill the heir to the throne, and it's up to Girton to uncover the traitor and prevent the prince's murder and his own. Honestly, that synopsis wouldn't have grabbed me. What has grabbed me about this book is the way my friends on Twitter talk about it. They always recommend this book to me, and so I'm very, very excited to get into the Wounded Kingdom series. It's a trilogy, I do believe. And R.J. Barker, because this is not the only R.J. Barker trilogy that I want to read. Okay, now one that I am super, super thrilled to get, but also is a little intimidating to me for one specific reason. So many people compare this series to Wheel of Time. I don't like Wheel of Time. But the reason I don't like the Wheel of Time is the classic writing style. And so from what I've heard, this book, while it is almost always compared to the Wheel of Time, it's more modern in its telling, even though it reads like a classic fantasy novel. And I'm so thrilled to get to it. Also, it's a chonker. Look at that. Chonker. But The Shadow of What Was Lost by James Islington. And it says, as destiny calls, a journey begins. It has been 20 years since the godlike Argers were overthrown and killed. Those who once served them, the gifted, were spared only after accepting the rebellion's 4 tenets, which vastly limited their powers. Davian suffers the consequences of a war lost before he was even born. When he discovers that he wields the forbidden power of the augurs, he sets into motion a chain of events that will change everything. To the west, a young man whose fate is intertwined with Davian wakes up in a forest covered in blood with no memory of who he is. And in the far north, an ancient enemy begins to stir. So I have a few people on my Twitter that I'm friends with that are currently reading through this trilogy. And one of them, I absolutely trust her reviews of everything. So she's loving it. And if she loves it, I'm probably going to love it. So I'm very excited to get to this. It is a thick, thick boy. And I do know it's very highly rated. So this might be coming up on a very near future TBR 10. Okay, so saw the Owlcrate. You saw what my mom got me. Now let's get into the books that my husband got me. So as you guys saw by my library tour, I am horrible about not buying the second book in a series, and I don't know why. And that's actually going to come up later too. But Siege and Storm by Leigh Bardugo, I finally have the second book, so I'm probably going to be reading this very soon. Even though it's not on a TBR, I really liked Shadow and Bone, so I really want to continue with the series. All right, and a book that you guys have seen on my channel and I have talked to you about wanting to read it, and it was in my folklore recommendations video, and that would be The House of Salt and Sorrows. Now this is a 12 Dancing Princesses retelling, and I've heard this book is creepy. I've heard that it is highly, highly enjoyable, and I can't wait to get to this. So since I talked about it in that video, that's all I'm gonna say. 12 Dancing Princesses retelling, creepy, atmospheric, very excited to read it. All right, A Curse So Dark and Lonely by Bridget Cammerer. I am so excited to read this. I know that this is a Beauty and the Beast retelling. That's all I know. That's all I want to know. I've heard nothing but great things about this book. Now, I've heard that the follow-up books are not as good as this one, but with a Beauty and the Beast retelling, I'm a easy sell right there, like easy sell. And I just think that I am going to enjoy this book so much, especially with the way that a couple of my trusted friends talk about it. But when a kingdom is cursed, love must bloom in the darkest of places. That sounds very, very Beauty and the Beast-esque. Right. You guys may have heard me talk about Sorcery of Thorns and how much I loved that book. So this next book may not surprise you, but I had to pick up an Enchantment of Ravens. And this one is also blinding, guys. I am sorry about that. But I loved Margaret Rogerson's writing. It is, I would say that it's new adult. I wouldn't say that it's young adult, because I just can't, the writing is so good. That's all I can say. The writing itself is so good that it didn't feel quite so young to me. The tone can be pretty young, but like, just the prose was really good, and the setting was really good, and the way things came together was really well done. But this is about the Fae, and I love stories about the Fae. So the reason I picked up Sorcery of Thorns first is because that was the book that was bought for me for Christmas. Now my husband bought me this for my birthday. And now for a series that has been pretty popular on BookTube recently, I picked up The Queen of Blood. Well, my husband did. And I am so excited to start this trilogy. I've talked about it a few times already, but the setting of this is supposed to be fantastic. The character work is supposed to be fantastic. Sarah Beth Durst is supposed to be an awesome writer. And I do still have an arc of hers that I need to read, and I'm going to try and do that before I read this. But I'm very, very excited. And one of the things that really draws me into this is one of the characters in here is a mom, and that's not something that you get a lot in fantasy. So I would really, really like to see how that is presented in a fantasy novel. I do eventually maybe want to read Sword of Kaigen, but I know that the beginning is not the greatest, and I know me. So I have kind of put that one off, but very excited to get to this book. And then my husband picked me up one of my favorite books from last year, and that is To Sleep in a Sea of Stars by Christopher Paolini. It reads like Mass Effect, so of course I love it. It's amazing. You guys can see me gush about this in other videos, because I tend to go on a rant when I talk about it. Well, not a rant, but like a gush fest when I talk about it. A follow-up that I am thrilled to have my hands on, All the Tides of Fate by Adeline Grace. I read All the Stars and Teeth last year. This is so fun. So fun. The magic system is fun. The world building is fun. The characters are amusing. Such a fun series. And you guys, if you want something that is lighthearted and fun, it does get a little dark towards the end of All the Stars and Teeth, but really well written, fun, fast paced, young adult. This is the second in the series, and I'm not sure if it's going to be a trilogy or a series, but a main character that you can fall in love with too. She's quite amazing. Highly recommend this one, or All the Stars and Teeth, and I'm excited to have this one on my shelves now. I'm not going to talk about these next ones, but I'm going to show you that they're going to be on my shelves soon because my husband bought them for me. You guys know I am reading my way through The Faithful and the Fallen this year, and now I have book 3 and book 4, and we will talk about Valor in another video. But I am really, really enjoying John Gwynn's writing. I do wish the cast of characters was smaller so that I could keep up and these weren't so hard for me to read, but very, very much enjoying this story. Very much enjoying this story. And the final book that my husband purchased for me would be From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout. Now, the Shelf Space Discord has been hounding me to read it. And every time I talk about it, they're like, why haven't you read this already? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't have it yet. But I'm very excited to get into this. This is a fantasy romance in the thread of Sarah J. Maas, and I didn't enjoy my first introduction to Sarah J. Maas, but I do like fantasy and I do like romance, and I'm hoping that I will really like Poppy and Hawk, and I know their names and haven't even read the books. But from what I know, Poppy is a maiden. She's supposed to remain pure. However, the world around her is kind of going to hell, and she's like, well, I don't get why I have to be this way if the world's just gonna fall apart anyway. And I think people are lying to me. So she doesn't want to remain as pure as she's supposed to be. And then when she encounters Hawk, of course, you know, things go really off the wire because she likes some Hawk. But that's what I know about it, and I'm very excited to read it. I don't know when I'm gonna get to this book, but I hope it's soon because I'm down. I should have picked this up in February, but I didn't. And then there are 2 other books that my husband got me that are not here yet, and that would be Lancelot by Giles Christian, which I just love any Camelot retelling. Always a big fan of that. And I didn't know it existed until Elle said something about it, and I was like, what? I did read a lot of his stuff for Norse-vember, but I'm very, very intrigued by that one. And then he got me the second book in the Strange Case of the Alchemist Daughter. It has something to do with Europe in the title. I'll put a picture of it up, but I'm very excited to get back in with these characters because they were a blast and a half. They were cheeky and fun, and I really want to see what happens in the next book because they are now chasing down this infamous scientific group that their parents were a part of, and I'm really excited for that one. Now for the books that I purchased at the buy sell trade for $20. Like all of these, this whole rest of this video, I only spent $20 getting the rest of these books. A few years ago, I read Daughter of the Blood by Anne Bishop, and I never moved on with the trilogy because I couldn't find them. I said in a previous video I didn't know why, but then I remembered it was because I couldn't find the next 2. But when I was at my buy-sell trade, I found the trilogy. I'm not a huge fan of mass market paperback, but I've been trying to get a hold of these books for so long that I jumped on them, and they're in really good condition. I kind of love these old school fantasy covers. But looking back on my review, I was on Goodreads. I wanted to move it to my want to read instead of my read so that it pops up for my TBR 10. But I gave this book 5 stars when I read it. So I'm really, really excited to get back into it. And a lot of my friends who know that I got this, they're like, oh my gosh, Anne Bishop's The Black Jewels trilogy. I totally forgot about that. That trilogy was so great. And I'm like, yeah, I remember that the first one was great. I'm going to have to reread it because it has been years, but I've been looking for them for years. So pumped about this. And again, I had a ton of credit when I went in. So when I was looking, I wasn't extremely picky, but I was also on the lookout for things that sounded really good or things that I had heard about and wanted to get my hands on. So these are books that I've heard about, I wanted to get my hands on, or authors that I'm familiar with. And this next one, I actually haven't heard anybody talk about, but it's by Adrian Tchaikovsky. So I was thrilled to pick this up. And then when I posted my picture on Twitter, I had a couple people say, oh my gosh, that series is really good. So I got Empire in Black and Gold, and it says the city-states of the lowlands have lived in peace for decades, bastions of civilization, prosperity, and sophistication, protected by treaties, trade, and a belief in a reasonable nature of their neighbors. But meanwhile, in far-off corners, the Wasp Empire has been devouring city after city with its highly trained armies, its machines, its killing art. And now its hunger for conquest and war has become insatiable. Only the aging Stenwald maker, spymaster, artificer, and statesman can see that the long days of peace are over. It falls upon his shoulders to open the eyes of his people before a black and gold tide sweeps down over the lowlands and burns away everything in its path. But first he must stop himself from becoming the Empire's latest victim. So it sounds really, really good. And like I said, I hadn't heard anything about this when I found it, but I was like, oh, Adrian Tchaikovsky. And this is a series I hadn't heard about. So very, very intrigued. Very, very intrigued. So this next book, I follow quite a few booktubers. Like, there's a lot. But two of my favorites are Brittany, and I think her channel is Books with Brittany, and Leslie from The Nerdy Narrative. And they have pretty differing opinions on books. Sorry, I'm trying to get adjusted because my legs are falling asleep. But they have pretty differing opinions on books. And that's part of the reason I follow them, because while Brittany may like this one, Leslie didn't like it. And Leslie may like this one, but Brittany didn't like it. And I have seen this come up on both of their channels, and one of them loves it and one of them kind of hates it. And I say kind of because there are elements that Brittany doesn't like about this book, even though there were elements that she really did like, but Leslie really loved it. And so I had to pick it up when I saw it, and that would be The Forgetting Moon by Brian Lee Durfee. And so let me tell you that Brittany doesn't like it because it's sexist. And since that is a very big thing for her that she just doesn't find appealing in books, I read a few authors that sexism does become a little prevalent in their works. And it doesn't always bother me. There are some elements to sexism that will bother me. But from what I understand, I might not be put off by this, but I might. Now, the thing is I want to know. I want to know where I land. Because with Leslie loving it and Brittany not liking it, I want to know if I like it, because they're two of my favorite booktubers. And that, yeah, I just need to know. Welcome to the Five Isles, where war has come in the name of the invading army of Sor Sevier, a merciless host driven by the prophetic fervor of the angel prince Eros toward the last unconquered kingdom of Gul'Khana. The Forgetting Moon provides plenty of well-crafted spectacle, thrills, suspense, blood thunder, and general sense of wonder. Well, I'm very excited to read it. And it's also one of those really good floppy paperbacks. This one is a Goodreads Storygraph pick your poison recommendation from the fact that I loved The Strange Case of the Alchemist Daughter, and it keeps popping up for me. And so when I found it at the buy sell trade for $1, I was like, I'm gonna have to invest. And it is Just One Damn Thing After Another by Jodi Taylor. And so I don't know a whole lot about it, other than the reason this is always recommended to me is because I love the snarky sarcasm that is in Strange Case of the Alchemist Daughter. And if the title doesn't tell you that this is going to be sassy and sarcastic, then I don't know what else will. But behind the seemingly innocuous facade of St. Mary's Institute of Historical Research, a different kind of academic work is taking place. Just don't call it time travel. These historians investigate major historical events in contemporary time. And they aren't your harmless eccentrics either. A more accurate description, as they ricochet around history, might be unintentional disaster magnets. So just that part of the synopsis, I'm like, yep, I'm gonna like this. And then I also found the second book of the Magician's Trilogy. I still haven't read the first one yet. I'm a huge fan of the show, so I really just need to get into these and read them. But since this is $1, I was like, okay, might as well buy the second one. This next one is by an author that I keep meaning to read. Like, I own quite a few books by him, but I haven't read them yet. And I keep finding them at the buy sell trade and spending like $1 on them. So I keep accumulating them and haven't read them. But this, look, the cover, Skyborne by David Dalglish. And I just love this cover. 6 islands float high above the endless ocean where humanity's final remnants are locked in a brutal civil war. Their parents slain in battle, twins Kale and Brenna Skyborne are training to be Seraphim, elite soldiers of aerial combat who wield elements of ice, fire, stone, and lightning. When the invasion comes, they will take to the skies and claim their vengeance. Sounds fantastic. And then again, when I posted the picture of what I got at the buy sell trade, people were like, hey, that's a really good book. And I was like, okay, how come you guys haven't been recommending it to me then? JK. But really, I think this sounds like it's going to be wonderful. Next, I have Traitors Blade by Sebastian de Castile, and I blame Alan from the Library of Alexandria, because I don't know that I would have picked up this book if I hadn't heard him talk about it so many times. There's another that's about to come up that I blame Alan for, and it's a recent favorite of his, but I keep seeing it everywhere. And so I picked that one up too. But this is the first of the Great Coats series, and from what I know, we have some very heroic heroes. We have good for the sake of good, and I think I might like it. I do like grittier characters, and I do like grittier stories, but I want to give this a try just because I keep hearing Alan talk about it, and I really think that it could be a series that I like. We shall see. This one was one I read last year that I adored. It was not great. It was not one of those that you read it and you're like, that was so fantastic, I have to own it. But I adored it. I thought it was fun. It was different. It appealed to me on so many levels that I was just, I don't know, I thought it was beautiful. And that is Across the Nightingale Floor by Lee and Hearn. And I ended up giving this book 4 stars, but finding it for $1 in this good of condition, I couldn't pass it up. I wanted to own it just because when I read it, I had such a good time. I could see myself rereading it. So that's why I have this one. All right, here's the other book that you can blame Alan for. A Shadow in Summer by Daniel Abraham. This is the first book in the Long Price Quartet. Alan has talked about this book so much recently. He is loving it, and they're pretty short books. So I wanted to give this one a try just because, again, I keep hearing him talk about it, and it's blurbed by George R.R. Martin. The city-state of Saraket dominates the summer cities. Its wealth is beyond measure. Its port is open to all the merchants of the world, and its ruler, the Kai Saraket, commands forces to rival the gods. Commerce and trade fill the streets with 100 languages, and the coffers of the wealthy with jewels and gold. Any desire, however exotic or base, can be satisfied in its soft quarter. Blissfully ignorant of the forces that fuel their prosperity, the people live and work secure in the knowledge that their city is a bastion of progress in a harsh world. It would be a tragedy if it fell. So I have a feeling it's gonna fall. But again, a book that sounds really, really good, and I recommend that you check out Alan's videos on the Long Price Quartet and the Traitors Blade, because you'll get a lot more information than I can give you, and you get to hear him gush, and him gushing is just hilarious and adorable. So this next book I picked up on a whim because I was picking up a book by an author that I know fairly well and have read before, and this happened to be sitting right next to it because they have the same last name. And that is The Alchemist Daughter by Catherine McMahon. And reading this, it sounds like a Frankenstein retelling, even though the name Frankenstein is not mentioned. But it really sounds like we're going to be getting into a Frankenstein-esque type of story. And I'm down. I'm down for that. These next two were complete cover buys, but I have heard very good things about Elizabeth Bear before, and look at these. Aren't they pretty? Like, I love these covers. So this is the Lotus Kingdoms trilogy, and I am looking at the back of this. I don't know if I can show you guys this or not. But the other trilogy she has, look how pretty. Like, you can sell me on some books with these pretty covers. The Gauge is a brass automaton created by a wizard of Mezzaline around the core of a human being. His wizard is long dead, and he works now as a mercenary. He carries a message from a powerful sorcerer to the ruling queen of one of the Lotus Kingdoms. With him is the Dead Man, a bitter survivor of the bodyguard of the deposed Uthman Caliphate, protecting the message and the Gauge. They are friends of a particular sort. They are walking into a dynastic struggle between the rulers of the shattered pieces of one great empire. The young queen of Sarathai must choose a husband who will become the master of her kingdom. The leading suitor is her repulsive cousin, who believes he is destined to sit on the peacock throne. If not through marriage, then by conquest. Can sorcery and war in the hands of Gauge and a dead man reunite an empire? It sounds really good. I don't see anything in it that makes me go, what? And an automaton as the main character. We all know how much I like the Murderbot series, so there's that. So very, very excited to get into this one. And like I said, I've heard Elizabeth Bear writes really great books and Asian influence, Asian inspired. So I'm down. I'm down. I said McMahon was going to come back up again, even though it's not the same McMahon. But I have read Jennifer McMahon's books before. This is Burntown. And the one thing I have to say about Jennifer McMahon, her writing is great. Her endings are bad. But I still keep trying her books because I really think at one point in her writing, she's going to stick the landing. That's all I can say is I really hope that that is what happens. But she is like she writes almost like Stephen King-esque, except she doesn't have a whole lot of description, and her books do have the tendency to ramble a little bit, but she doesn't quite go as off base as King does. And so I do enjoy her books for that reason. And very Joe Hill, very like that, very much like that versus Stephen King. But she writes very creepy, mysterious, kind of scary books. And this is just the next on my list of books I haven't read by her. This is why I have a problem. So my husband bought me the first book in the series, and then I went to the buy sell trade and they had the third book in the series. This is why it happens all the time, because I never can find the first book at the buy sell trade, and so a lot of the times I don't pick up the second one, and by the time I have the first book, I'm stuck with only the third one at the buy-sell trade because whoever bought the first one came back and bought the second one. But this is the third novel in the Queens of Renthia series. And again, super excited to get into these. Okay, so I was pretty pumped about picking up this book. And then when I posted it on Twitter, everyone was like, have you read anything by Paul Hoffman yet? I'm like, no. And I was like, oh no, now I'm nervous. And they're like, no, it's not bad, but let me just say that it gets weird. That I'm okay with. I like weird. Weird is not a thing that throws me. But I got The Left Hand of God by Paul Hoffman because I had heard that it was an underrated series and I really wanted to get my hands on it. And you know, it's pretty. In the Redeemer Sanctuary, the stronghold of a secretive sect of warrior monks, torture and death await the unsuccessful or disobedient. Raised by the Redeemers from early childhood, like hundreds of other young captives, Thomas Cale has known only deprivation, punishment, and grueling training. He doesn't know that another world exists outside the fortress walls, or even that secrets he can't imagine lurk behind the sanctuary's many forbidden doorways. He doesn't know that his master, Lord Bosco, and the sanctuary's redeemers have been preparing for a holy war for centuries. A holy war that is now imminent, and Cale doesn't know that he's been noticed and quietly cultivated. It sounds really good. It actually has some, like, blood song vibes. So I might end up liking it. I don't know. But I say it has blood song vibes. I don't know when this was published. 2010, so I don't know which one came first. But it sounds good. I hope I like it. I hope I like the weird. Okay, and then the final book that I purchased at the buy sell trade is actually the Shelf Space Discord book of the month. So I will link the Shelf Space Discord so that you can join us if you like. But Fate of the Fallen by Kel Cade. Now, what I know about this is that it's snarky and irreverent. That is the only description I have heard of this book. And so Kings of the Wild maybe is something that you could tie to it, but snarky and irreverent, that's all I need to know. Snarky and irreverent fantasy, that's really all I need to know. Okay, that is the end of my absolutely massive birthday book haul, and I hope you guys had fun with me. I hope I have shown you guys some books that you didn't know about, or talked about some ones that have you intrigued. Let me know in the comments. Like, subscribe, and do all the fun things. I will see you in my next video. Bye!